As we enter into our time of Scripture, our Scripture this morning comes from the Gospel of John, the 13th chapter, verses 1 through 17. It's in your worship folder, but it's also on the screen behind me, so if you would join me in reading this together. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I am doing, but later you will understand." "No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." And Jesus answered, "And unless I wash you, you have no part with me." "Then, Lord," Simon Peter replied, "not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well." And Jesus answered, "A person who has had a bath needs only to wash his feet. His whole body is clean. And you are clean, though not every one of you." For he knew who was going to betray him, and that is why he said, "Not everyone is clean." When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand what I've done for you?" he asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. I tell you the truth. No servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them." Let's bow for a moment of prayer. Gracious God, we thank you for your great love. Your great love that continues to be poured upon us, your great love that continues to share with us the words that we need. Words of life, words of hope, words of correction, words of training. And Lord, as we have read your word today, we ask that this word come alive in us, that your word come and take us and mold us and shape us in your image. That as we understand your word, that we may grow and be like you each and every day. So Lord, hear our prayer, hear our conversation. Hear our hearts. In your name, amen. Amen. We've been talking about discipleship for a good number of weeks now, and I tried it last week, so we'll try it again this week. So what is a disciple? An apprentice. There we go. All right, that's great. Last week it was a little quieter. Okay, last week you didn't say anything. So I'm glad to hear we got that in. That apprentice is that person, not just an apprentice that we think of today where it's 9 to 5 learning a trade, but it's apprentice of long ago, of years ago, where you lived with the family. You gained their values. You saw how they worked. You were put into that situation to grow, not just in knowledge of the trade, but also physically and mentally and with the family. And so as we've gathered together, we've been looking at discipleship, and we've gone and looked at what it is to be a disciple with our prayers, our presence, our communication, our being in community. We looked at our gifts and how we have gifts and God uses them. Today we're talking about service. Today we're talking about maybe some of those things that we've been trained to do and worked at doing and living them out. Because as Jesus was with the disciples, he taught them what it was to be in service, what it was to serve someone else, what it was to see a heart or see a need and begin to meet that need. And seeing that heart and seeing that need it didn't matter who was on the other side of that. Jesus went and did. I mean, you can look throughout the Gospels, you see Jesus coming upon lepers. Now lepers we don't quite think about in our day and our age. Leprosy at that time meant that those people were ostracized, meaning they were removed from community, meaning that no one was allowed to touch them or be near them. In fact, it was so demeaning that as lepers would come by, they had to tell the world that they were unclean. So whenever they saw someone, they had to shout, "Unclean, unclean," meaning stay away from me. Don't come near me. Run away in the opposite direction. So as Jesus was walking around and talking and sharing his heart and his love and sharing who God was and what God was doing, he came upon these lepers and he talked to them, put his hands upon them. He was around them. So for Jesus, it didn't matter who it was. Last week we talked about Zacchaeus, and Zacchaeus was a tax collector. Again, someone that the rest of society looked down upon. But Jesus stood underneath his tree and said, "I'm going to your house. I want to eat with you. I want to have this meal with you." And Jesus did. We look at Jesus earlier in the Gospel of John. He's standing with the Samaritan woman, a woman who comes at a well when no one else was there because she did not feel that she was worthy. And as they talked and as they shared, Jesus continued to speak to her and continued to encourage her. And he came to a point in time and said, "Hey, why don't you bring your husband?" And she said, "Well, I don't have one." And Jesus knew her past enough to say, "Okay, you're right. You've had 4, and the one you're living with is not your husband. But bring them anyways. Let them see this love that I have. Let them understand this love that I'm sharing with you, this life that is never ending." And this woman went back, not only told the man she was living with, but she brought back the rest of the community to hear about what Jesus had done, the love that he gave them, the way he served her. We come to today's reading to the Gospel of John, the 13th chapter, and we come to this moment, and yeah, it's more the Passover, it's more Easter-ish than anything else. But it's still a great way of seeing Jesus because Jesus is the Son of God. He's the one who's in power and authority. He's the one who was their Lord and their teacher. He told them and they did it. He spoke to them and demons left. He said words and prayed over things, and there was multitude of bread and fish, and things happened when he spoke. Most times when you hear that, you think maybe of this story, a story of a CFO who was new to an area, was coming to a church and met with the pastor and said, "Hey, I want to serve the church. And in fact, I think I should serve as the finance chairperson." And the pastor said, "Well, we have some things that we go through, some procedures, and so we'd like you to start off learning some of the things. So you need to be a teller first. You need to count the money first." He says, "Well, I can't do that. I'm well above beyond that. Don't you know my degree? Don't you know where I worked? And then I tell you I was a CFO." And the pastor said, "I'm sorry, that's where we all start off at. We all start off down below and work our way up." And the CFO left mad and huffed and said, "I will not be coming back to this church." The pastor said, "That's okay." A couple years later, fast forward a couple years, and it comes out that the CFO was embezzling money, and that his pride had gotten the best of him. And the pastor, as he's sharing the story, related to the fact of, I didn't want him in that position because it comes back to serving first. And God allowed him out of our church, and it was a good thing. But that service needs to be there. That pride can get in the way and can trip us up. And here's Jesus, the Son of God, coming into this table and sitting around there. And many times that power that we have may be like the CFO saying, "Well, someone needs to do this, and it's not going to be me." Because you see, at that time and that age is that they washed the feet to make sure that they were clean. Because you think about where those feet have been. They don't quite have shoes like we have shoes. And they have animals that walk the same road that they walk on. They have a little bit of dirt. They have a little bit of other things that travel on this road that go about these streets. And so washing that feet was really for the lowest servant. The servant who had no other job and was lucky to have a job, that's what that servant did. was wash those feet, because it wasn't a pleasant job. As we see, Jesus stands up. He notices that there isn't someone doing this job. The disciples are kind of sitting around smug and singing, well, maybe Judas will do it, or maybe Peter will do it, or maybe Andrew will do it. Someone else is going to do it. But Jesus takes off his outer garment, takes off his jacket, takes off his, if you think about a suit and tie, takes off his tie, takes off his jacket, gets the towel, and he begins to wash the disciples' feet. Now here is the Son of God, who just days before walked in on a parade and was the center of that parade, who before that was healing people, who was teaching about God's love, who was forgiving people, who was bringing the dead back to life, wrapping a towel around his waist, kneeling down, getting a basin of water and starting to wash feet that had dust, grime, and other unmentionables on it. This was a job that was not beneath Jesus. And as he did that with love, and he did that with care, and he did that with washing their feet and looking them in the eyes. And I just picture, and this isn't in the text, but this is my interpretation. I just see Jesus kind of praying over those disciples, washing their feet and asking God to be with these feet, to be with this body, to be with this spirit. And you get one who says, no, Jesus, you shouldn't be doing this. I should be doing this for you. You can't do this. And Jesus says, unless I do this, you have no part of me. This is what he's telling Peter. Unless you tell me, unless you let me wash your feet, unless you let me serve you, you cannot be a part of who I am. And as Peter usually does, kind of takes it over the top, and he says, well, not just my feet, then wash my hands and all of me. Wash my entire being. And Jesus says, you've already been washed. You've bathed. You're clean. Your feet are the only things that are dirty. You don't need the whole one. You've been with me this long. You know that I forgive forgiveness, and I fill you with love, and I share with you love, and I serve you with love. This is just another act of that love. This is another way of me pouring out my heart for you. You don't need all of the stories. Again, you don't need to go through the whole experience. You just need this reminder of love, of service, of care. And as Jesus finished, he puts his outer garment, puts his jacket, puts his tie back on, and comes back to the table. And again, he tells them, look, you call me Lord and teacher, and rightly so, for that is who I am. I am your Lord. I am your teacher. But see what I've done here. See how I've served. See how I have been here at your feet, washing, how I've been caring, how I've been a part of your life. This is my way. This is God's way of what we should be. As my disciples, I am encouraging you, I am teaching you, I am training you to do the same thing, to go and to serve. Now, we may not go and wash other people's feet. In fact, you may get kicked out of places if you try and do that to people. But there are other ways you can serve. There are other ways that you can help. There are other ways that you can serve someone with love and dignity and respect. This morning, we have a great way for you to go and do that. A great way. There's fives and ones. There's money up here at the end of the communion rails. And we're encouraging you to take what you need to go and love and serve someone else. To go and take that cup of coffee and buy them a cup of coffee and sit and talk with them. Maybe it's someone who just needs a little extra food. Here's an opportunity for you and to go and not just give them the money to go buy a food, but go and eat with them. Listen to their story. Hear their heart. Let them know it's not just because you feel bad for them, it's because you love them. And if you have to work on that love, here's an opportunity to work on that love. To be a part of what God has done for you, because Jesus has sat there and he's washed your feet. If you think about your sins, you think about all that you have done, Jesus has cleansed you from that. Jesus has forgiven you from that. Remember, forgiveness is looking past that sin, knowing that they're there, but seeing beyond them and seeing who you are. Forgiveness is letting that go, not holding it against us, against you, against me. Maybe you need a few extra dollars, and maybe you're going to put some extra money with that to maybe buy a tank of gas for someone. Help them get around. To open up a doorway. Earlier, at the earlier couple months ago, about a month and a half ago, we had a need. And we had someone pay it forward in a sense that it was a great need. And someone gave of their dollars, their financial resources to help pay a utility bill for a family they had never met, for a family that was struggling to make it through due to some health issues, due to some other concerns. And that family has been paying it forward because they've continued to work with those that society has outcasted. This woman who received the funds has been finishing up her degree, who's working with children who are at risk, and was so grateful. Been without this utility for a couple of months and was grateful and was thankful and appreciated the gift. Not everyone's going to. Not everyone's going to say thank you. Not everyone's going to be happy that you bought them a cup of coffee or that you bought them lunch or that you gave them some gas. But that's not the reason why you did it, is it? Going back to why Jesus washed the disciples' feet, it was out of the love for them, the way he continued to serve them. And out of, why are you doing this? Hopefully, it's out of your love for God, your love for Christ, your love for someone else, that you are partaking, that you are sharing, that you are opening up this doorway.